The Fossil Prairie Park Preserve is fortunate to be a partner site of the Silos and Smokestacks National Heritage Area. Our connection with agriculture is through the Rockford Brick Tile Co, which had their plant on what is now part of the park. The main products produced by the Rockford Brick Tile Co were bricks and drainage tiles. Those drainage tiles happen to be utilized in order to drain any wet spots in the field and make them able to produce agricultural crops. This quarry area, where many visitors come to fossil hunt and fish today, would have looked a lot different at the time that the Rockford Brick Tile Co was functioning here. The sides of the quarry would have been as straight up and down as the walls are in your house, and the quarry bottom would not have held water, it would have been dry. They were harvesting clay out of it in order to make the bricks and drainage tiles. All right, so let's follow that clay as it came from the quarry area to its finished product as a tile. So imagine dump trucks, and at one time even a railroad train called a goat that would take the raw material out of the quarry area, would take it down this now established trail, which would have been more like a road at that time, in order to head to the plant site. At time of operation, the Rockford Brick Tile Co was a major industry in the town of Rockford and hired many, many employees as they were just graduating from high school or even into their adulthood. The path of the clay would have followed this trail slightly, and it would have gone up this ramp, and the raw material would have been dumped out and then processed through large machines in order to make it workable through the addition of water and other additives, so that they could shape it into the various sizes of drainage tiles, and then air dried in the drying room before entering into the kilns. So what you see in front of you would have been all of the kilns utilized by the Rockford Brick Tile Co. At peak operation, there were 16 of the beehive kilns. Today we have 2 of them remaining, and in a moment we'll take a little peek inside of them. If you're out hiking the trails at the Fossil Prairie Park, you may notice some signage that has a figure on it. That is actually Rocky Ford. He was kind of the mascot of the Rockford Brick Tile. His body is made up of all the pieces that they produced. So you can see the bricks, the different sizes of drainage tiles and the elbows to them, and his head is actually what's called a speed tile. And so Rocky Ford was very common on a lot of their promotional items, and many of those we have available for visitors to see up in the Fossil and Prairie Center. We also have interpretive panels here for visitors that will explain the process of how the tiles were made, faces of the employees, and a little exclamation of not only how they were made, but how the kilns function and the purpose of the tiles themselves. The Rockford Brick Tile Company closed in the mid-1970s because the black plastic tile that we use today became easier to install and cheaper to install. And so that was the switchover. The Rockford Brick Tile Company did try to sell some of that tile, but unfortunately it was not profitable enough for them, and so that's when they closed. We'll take a little visit into one of the kilns. So each one of these kilns would have been hand stacked. So imagine the amount of tiles that would fit into a kiln this size. The floor would have been an open honeycomb, and that would allow the heat to be moved from one kiln to another through a series of tunnels, so they could actually recycle it as one tunnel, as one kiln was done firing, they could move that heat into another to start to warm up. Originally, these kilns were fired by coal ovens or furnaces on the outside, and then they did switch over to natural gas. In this kiln, we actually have an opening to kind of show you what those tunnels would have looked like. The doorways on the kilns would have been sealed shut with brick as they were ready to be fired. From the plant drawings that we have, the kiln that we just came out of would have been in the first row, and the rest of the kilns would have been in 3 to 4 other rows in front of us. As I said, there were 16 during peak production. There also would have been one smokestack at the beginning of operation for each pair of kilns as they were firing. And as you can see, nature has kind of taken back what would have been concrete and brick areas and stacks of drainage tiles. So not only did the Rockford Brick Tile have 16 beehive kilns, they were also the first in the state to have what's called a tunnel kiln. In a regular beehive kiln, all of the pieces had to be carried in, stacked, and then the kiln was heated up to have them fired, and then removed and put on carts, and then stacked to either put on railroad cars or in individuals' trucks to be taken to the farm. In the tunnel kiln, the tiles were put on a cart, and the cart would move through the kiln, and then the finished product would come out on the other side. It was a lot less labor intensive, but unfortunately it was not functioning as intended. And so in the early 70s, the Rockford Brick Tile was actually moving back to the beehive kilns instead of using the tunnel kiln anymore. So this here is the pad of the tunnel kiln. So on the far end in front of us, the raw products would have been put on carts, and they would have been moved along on railroad tracks. And then on this end, the finished product would have been taken off those carts. So as you can see, it was a large building and the first one in the state. So what happened to those products after they were made? A lot of visitors that come to the Fossil and Prairie Center talk about how they would come here with their parents in order to pick up tiles to take back to their farm to install in their fields. So in the northeast Iowa area, the Rockford Brick Tile was very well known for having a high quality product, and actually it came with a 100-year guarantee. So I'm sure that there are a lot of fields around that still have some Rockford Brick Tile